Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Player 2 podcast. I'm your co-host, Rade and
And I'm your co-host, Dave Leary. It is wonderful to be back with you again, Rade. I see that you are reconfiguring your office a little bit, so no sign this week, huh?
Yeah, I'm going to figure out exactly where I could put it. I don't want to take down the art and have that sitting on the sign, and I don't want to swap them all the time because I think that's not good for art. So I'll sort it out.
I look forward to the return of the sign. It was nice to see it last week. And it is another minor milestone this week. It's our 25th episode of the podcast.
Sure is. Quarter century.
That's pretty exciting.
The sign is right there, by the way.
Okay. I'll trust you that it's just off screen somewhere and watching you and judging you.
It is. All right, bunch of stuff to talk about this week. Let's start with the news. Some details are coming out on Valve's hardware. They released details about the Steam controller. And what surprised everybody is this thing's $100 per controller.
That does not seem too bad to me. I'd be interested in your take, but I think for a modern, very high quality controller, that's kind of in the ballpark, if not a little under, right?
I mean, there's kind of two schools of thought to that. Like the higher end first party controllers, like it's not that far off. Those tend to be fairly expensive. But if you look at where all the heat is right now in the controller market, if there is heat in the controller market, tends to be on really high quality third party controllers. And those are coming in at $40 less.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not trying to undersell, somebody spending $100 on what's basically a completely optional purchase in your life. This is clearly a first world problem. But I mean, I think Valve's intent here is to target that higher end controller market, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's intent to do that. I think they're going after a certain customer, but like I think this is just a sign of costs across the board for hardware being more expensive and just something. I think if Valve had their choice, they would not price it at $100, but they're not going to take a loss on the hardware. And I don't think manufacturers should. But man, it doesn't bode well for the cost of the Steam machine and the Steam frame and next generation consoles and all those sorts of things. All we're seeing now is upward spikes in pricing.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to change. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm willing to wait and see how the rest of the Steam hardware comes in. And the quality of the controller will perhaps determine whether customers judge this to be a really overpriced low-end controller or a underpriced high-end controller.
Yeah, that's
right. Couple different ways to
slice it.
Yeah.
All right. Some other things in the news. You wanted to talk about a studio shutdown, right?
Yeah, and I do, as I've mentioned before, hate doing this just because there's so much grim news in the industry these days. But this one, I won't say it surprised me, but I was saddened by it. Spider Studio, which is a French developer based in Paris, is shutting down. They were around 90 people. I don't think anyone would say that they were a AAA studio. They never broke out big, but they were a solid AA studio that had a kind of a steady history for some years of delivering some pretty interesting and, in my opinion, underappreciated games. Unfortunately, their latest Greedfall 2 did not deliver to projections either critically or commercially. And I think this is something that you and I have known for a while, but any mid-sized studio is really one failure away from going under. There's just very little cushion with the way these AA studios run things. Not surprising, but sad nonetheless.
Yeah, it sure is. I'd never like to see that happen. There's maybe one studio that I think had it coming for a while, but that is not the case here, and that is very rare.
Yeah, and not every game can be a hit, right? So I think the fact that these studios don't have room to have cushion for a game that doesn't work out is kind of frightening, because this is part of why we lose talented teams, right? I mean, so many talented teams I know have had a game that didn't really work out quite right, but then went on to do great things the next time around and learned a bunch from the failure. We just keep losing that institutional knowledge, and that's unfortunate.
Well, I mean, not every game can be a hit, but we're in a market right now where if you're not a hit, you're a failure and you're out of business. And like, wow, that is a terrible place to be.
Yeah, for sure.
What else did we have in the news that you wanted to talk about this week?
Well, so this is a tricky topic, and I want to be thoughtful in my comments here, but I'd like to just talk a little bit about something that made the political news lately, which is the attempted shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. One of the notes of news that got made about that incident was that the guy who attempted to shoot things up there was a game developer, something of a failed indie game developer, as many indie game developers are, and built a game back in 2018. It was on Steam. It was another tiny little game that, like so many others on Steam, launched to bad user reviews and then vanished, other than the small number of people who bought it. Valve made the call this week to pull that game off the platform, and they haven't released their reasoning for this yet. There was certainly a lot of funny reviews that were getting posted in the aftermath of the event on the game that clearly had nothing to do with the game itself. And because of the scale of this game, I think there will not be any outcry over Valve's decision. But I think the nuanced discussion I wanted to have with you for a minute is what would this have looked like if this was not an indie game built by one guy? What if, for example, one member of the Valheim team had committed a terrible crime or attempted to commit a terrible crime, and Steam suddenly pulled Valheim off their platform, and the other 8 or 9 members of the team suddenly lost their revenue stream and their livelihood? And I do think I wondered a little bit what Valve's justification for pulling the game was. The game itself didn't violate the platform's terms of service in any way. It wasn't violent. They're making a call based on the actions of the author in this case, not the game itself. And I guess I felt a little discomfort, and I was wondering if you felt the same, about whether platform holders should be in that kind of business when they make decisions about what to pull off their platforms.
So there's precedence here. There was a developer ages ago from Sony Interactive that had murdered his family, and he finally got discovered and tried and convicted of this. Like, they didn't take down any of those games. I think it would be absolutely appropriate, given the review bombing and political commentary that was being made in this game, which, by the way, was called boredom and had absolutely nothing to do with extremist views or anything like that. It would be absolutely appropriate for a platform holder to suspend all commentary and reviews on the game. If people are going to be bad actors and bomb it for something that has nothing to do about the product, like, you don't need to host that and platform that kind of stuff. I just don't get why you would remove it unless it had something controversial in it that was leading to fomenting violence or hurting people or something like that. So I think it's just they wanted to wash their hands of the controversy entirely.
Yeah, and again, I certainly think that, Valve, no one's really going to question it this time, just because of nobody cared about the game, and it was made by literally one dude. So I don't think that this particular deplatforming of the author will cause any outcry. I guess this is just part of a long-running question, which isn't even specific to the game industry, but to all art in general. How do you separate the art from the artist? I think about H.P. Lovecraft's rampant racism, and yet he made a great, hugely influential body of horror work that is leveraged today by many, many, many people. So it's not exactly the same, I know, but I just felt a certain uncomfortableness about the platform, in this case, Valve, making a call without any reason behind it to completely remove a piece of art from their store.
Yeah, I mean, look,
bad as that art may have been.
I don't think it was the right call. I think they should have squelched the commentary like I suggested. I think this would be the same thing as finding out that Kanye West was crazy and had some really bad views, and like now nobody really pays attention to him.
No, wait, Kanye West is crazy and has bad views?
Just a little bit, right? But like, when an artist or someone does that, like, it's fine to be like, you know what? I'm not going to listen to their stuff anymore. I'm going to get rid of all of it. I'm going to burn my records. Fine, do that. Like, but you don't need to try to erase something from history. Unless, like, if you were doing if it turned out that person had like a secret Easter egg in there where they were, teaching people how to commit some terrible crime or something like that, then by all means get that out of there. We don't need that. But that's not what happened.
Certainly removing it from their platform, given the current climate, is the easy choice from a Valve corporate perspective.
Yeah. All right, moving on to something controversial, but for a different reason. There was a report floating around, maybe you could call it a rumor, that Sony was going to require online check-ins every 30 days for digital titles that were purchased. And I remember looking at this, and this sat out there for like a day or two. I'm like, wow, that's just kind of a boneheaded thing. But then Sony put out an official statement. It's like, no, that's not happening. It's not a DRM checkup like that. It's just the initial install.
Yeah, I mean, this seems like it was. I mean, you kind of suggested that maybe they were floating a trial balloon to see how that would go over and then pulled back on it, right?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I've seen companies do this, and I don't know if that was the case here. This is just pure conjecture. It could have just been a rumor, a false rumor. Maybe somebody heard something, but they misheard it and leaked something. Or maybe it was the plan and someone said, hey, let's float this and see what happens. The last part is a little bit conspiratorial, but like that happens.
Yeah, and I mean, either way, I think, and I expect you'll agree with this, that would have been a pretty bad play. That's the type of thing that will drive customers away and just doesn't really seem necessary for any reason, does it?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary at all. There's just a general unease, particularly among gamers, but I think it's starting to happen more and more, where there's a question of who owns the content. You know, with some of these onerous terms of service that it can be revoked at any point in time. There's one maybe some people don't know about, but like if you die, you can't pass on your Steam library of games you purchased to an heir or someone else in your family, which is kind of wild to me. Like I paid for it. I'm not pirating it. Why can't I do that? And all of it kind of serves to devalue games overall. And I just don't think it's a good idea. So speaking about devaluing games, the topic I wanted to talk about this week, I'll just put up the thesis right from the beginning. Should games be free? And that's a spicy one.
It is going to be a little spicy. I'm going to anticipate here that you and I will disagree on this one.
And I'm gonna stipulate that I don't think we will. I think we're going to have a nuanced discussion, and this will be more civil than I thought. But maybe I'll just throw some haymakers.
To heck with that, man. I came to fight. Let's go. Come on.
All right. So I think we could agree that free to play is like the only successful business model on mobile. Like nothing else has worked in games.
Ooh, okay. You're starting with a pretty bold assertion, and I will stipulate in this discussion that you know far more about the free-to-play market and the mobile market than I do. I'm going to argue for a second that is what is working right now, and certainly it would be very hard for anything that doesn't adopt that model to break through in mobile. But I'm not going to feel totally comfortable with an absolute line in the sand there. But continue your thesis.
Well, so the reason I'm saying that is we tried in the early days of mobile, which frankly is not that long ago, 18 years now, since the App Store stuff thereabouts came out. And we went from premium pricing, we went to 99 cents for like a year or two where that was the price. Then we went to free to play and we've never looked back. And even recognizable IP with high quality titles that would sell for $10, $20, $30 on a console, just don't sell on mobile. It's like those customers, the entire thing, the store ranking algorithm, everything else, it's entirely built around free to play. And you just won't rank otherwise on there. And then this sole thing that really matters on mobile is just kind of where you show up in the store. Well, not the sole thing, one of the most important things.
So I think that is okay. Now we're getting into the nuance a little bit. I see where you're headed with some of this, I think. There's an awful lot of daylight between a premium priced $10 to $30 game on mobile and a completely free-to-play game that adopts the old free-to-play models of monetization, isn't there? There are options in between those two extremes on the pole.
I mean, you could do free to try with a subscription, but when I say premium, just anything where you can't even do anything without paying for it first. Like I can't think of any example of a successful title or even a reasonably successful title doing that on mobile.
Okay, I think that's fair. I will accept that mobile, at least, is probably predominantly free to play. And how much of that is because the real benefits of a free to play game are reach, right? More people are going to try it, more people are going to check it out because there's less commitment.
I don't know what it is about mobile. If it's the style of game, how people like to play it. Like we could really parse that out, but I don't know if that's the argument to be had about whether that's the case. Let's just leave that one and just say that is what it is there. Interestingly, free to play does not do well on consoles. It's kind of mixed on PC, and it really depends on the region and the title there. But on consoles, it's just not the predominant thing. It just does not do well there.
Yeah, and I mean, console makers and platform holders are holding a lot more weight on their shoulders there, right? I mean, they have to justify the cost of the hardware in a way that mobile developers maybe don't. Is that part of what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be the case, with the exception of Nintendo, that Xbox, PlayStation would sell at a slight loss on the hardware and recoup that on the software royalties.
So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. As a PC player, and this is where I have to be careful because I think my personal preferences are going to collide with my attempts to be objective and rational in this discussion. I can't stand free to play, and I never really have been able to. Some of that was the really kind of exploitative, predatory style free to play stuff that I feel absolutely ruined mobile gaming for me about a decade and a half ago. Part of it is I just don't want to be constantly upsold on things while I'm trying to enjoy a game. I want to buy a game and kind of go in and enjoy what I'm doing and not think about the fact that I paid money for it up front. That's what makes me happy as a gamer. That makes my experiences better. But I'm not trying to speak for everyone there, but I think that I probably am more representative of the PC and console audience than I am of the mobile audience. So that's probably partly where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think PC is interesting because where free to play has worked there, it's a very different type of free to play than mobile. Like if you looked at what Riot has done with any of their free to play titles, their entire monetization model is completely different than mobile. And they're not as aggressive about they definitely don't make the game difficult to impossible to play as you progress unless you pay. There's a lot more around convenience and esports and sticking with the title and customization there. And it's definitely not pay to win. Like I think that's the important difference there. Like you can't spend your way into beating another player in the successful free to play PC games.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So another thing you and I have talked about when we've gushed about Arc Raiders is how smart it was to launch that product at $39.99 US versus what it would normally sell for at $60, $70 for a AAA title. And I was just having a discussion with my wife because she was debating buying the Nintendo subscription for our daughter because she wanted to play a couple games there. And she was balking at the price of like a 5-year-old Mario game. It was still like $60. She's like, what the heck? This is crazy. It's like, why are they doing that? And we started discussing all that, hence why we're talking about it today on the show. But it got me thinking, right? If you've got a certain type of free-to-play that works on mobile, a different type that works on PC for some titles, but not all titles, but mostly premium on PC, premium on console, and then you get an entire new generation of gamers that grew up with Minecraft and Fortnite and Roblox in particular. That's just conditioned to not pay a premium price. And we're seeing that as they start to matriculate out and move on to other platforms, VR being one of them. Does that spell the end of premium games, or do all games need to be free in the coming years as the older generations age out and the younger generations that grew up with Minecraft, Roblox, and Fortnite take over?
I mean, that's an interesting question. I think, the exception that immediately stands out in your construction there is that Minecraft was not actually free. It did involve paying for it.
It did.
So, I mean, I don't know that this generation is completely averse to paying for something. I think the value proposition has dropped. And unless, as we've talked about before on here, unless you're one of the elite titles like Grand Theft Auto 6, you've really got to justify a $60 or $70 price tag now, and 30 or 40 is much more palatable. I guess I would offer up this thought, if you're looking for a way to maybe split the difference between where mobile is with everything being free and where PC is where many fewer things are free and the things that are free adopt a different model. I think a model that a game could adopt is an extended, almost full game free demo, and then extensive DLC or content purchases that let you go deeper into a game. Maybe for something like a Crimson Desert, that means you get the first 10 hours or one region free, and then you buy the rest of it, either for one price or multiple prices. To me, that feels like something that could work on mobile and console and PC.
I don't know about mobile, if that would work there. I could see it working on PC and possibly console. I'll kind of go back to a couple anecdotes of things I remember when DLC was really popular on console and PC games. So we'd finish the game and we'd be doing bug fixing and polish for the last 3-4 months of the product, sometimes a little bit longer. You would free up a lot of artists primarily to that just wouldn't be that busy because like short of texture bugs and other stuff, like you're not debugging art. It either works or it doesn't most of the time. And what do you do with those people? And this keep in mind, this was in the era where high bandwidth connections were uncommon and there were bandwidth costs were real. You were like, well, you know what? We know we're going to do an expansion pack or a DLC for this. Let's just build the art for that and stick it on the CD or DVD because we have space. And so we started doing that. And then people would hack the DVD and look at it and see all this stuff that's on there and would just get irate that content that was on the disc that they paid for was unavailable and we were going to charge them more about that. Does that mindset carry through to today where you're like, wait, I have to pay for the rest of the game now? Like that part was free. Why did you do this to me? Or is it just people more used to it now?
Boy, that's an interesting question. I don't think that model of production is going to work much longer as companies kind of evolve into here is our core team and we're going to contract a bunch of art because you won't have those downtimes that used to lead to that particular brand of content being shoved onto a disc when it went out the door. Do customers care about that? I mean, I think maybe even back in the days you're talking about, that was a pretty small subset of customers that actually got irate about that kind of stuff. Noisy people saying, why is this content already on the disc in a forums doesn't necessarily translate into wide-scale consumer reaction to your product.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. But man, did they make a lot of noise.
They sure did. So I remember some of that noise.
Absolutely a thing. So what I'm wondering now, so just across the board with marketing being is unreliable, more unreliable now than it ever has been. I don't want to say ineffectual because I don't think that that's true. It's just not, you can't just make anything pop anymore. It's like you need a lot more luck than you needed to have in the past there. You can't spend your way into a title being successful. So you need a great game. You got to get the right message. You got to do it at the right time. With attention being so limited, choices being as numerous as they are, man, I don't even know if you're going to get a chance with the younger generations of players if there isn't some sort of extended amount of free play for them to get into it and see if they're vibing with it and it's what their friends are doing before they'll commit any money. Frankly, I don't even know if they're going to have much money to spend, just given the state of the economy worldwide, but that's a separate topic.
So how do you, I mean, I look at the way my son and his friends play games, and my son is 16 now, and, you know, he has a group of gamer buddies. I think there's one vector that I think is not accounted for in your conclusion about what the kids are playing these days, which is all the friend slop stuff we've talked about before. I mean, those are games that are not made for a lot of money. I'm talking about things like RV There Yet, Repo. And those games are pretty popular. They may not be popular for a long time, but they often sell really well and certainly make back the investment of time and development resources tenfold or more sometimes. So, you know, I think kids are absolutely willing to spend some money on some stuff, or at least go get their parents to spend money on stuff for them. It just has to be priced right, and it has to be the right games.
Maybe that's the answer. Maybe you start out with something. I mean, it doesn't have to be a friend slop game, but maybe it's a small game that did not cost you very, very much. And you use it to start building your community and your audience. And that's how you get to a bigger game that you can command a premium price point, because now you've got a base.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's somewhere between like when we were talking about the free demo model before, the $1.99 first version of a game that you then blow out to a sequel that's $6, and then you blow that out to a giant sequel that's $20. That seems like that's a path for a studio if that works monetarily.
This reminds me back when we used to build custom engines for games. So the old saying was, you know, your first game, you got to make back the cost of the development plus the cost of building the engine. So it's pretty hard to make a good profit on your first game, but the second one, that's where you make it all back.
Yeah, number two is always where the money is if the first game did well, right? That's true for almost every genre.
You have your tools, you have your engine, but more importantly, you have your mechanics that you know work, And as long as you're delivering on the core promise of what the game is, like the second one takes less time to build, costs less money to build, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I would not want to leave this discussion without doing something which I think we need to do a better job of on the podcast, and that's kind of definitively answering the question you propose. So I think for me, and I'll be interested to hear your response after this lovely nuanced discussion, my answer to should games be free is, hey, guess what? It depends, which is the answer that it's been for a long time. Depends on the game, depends on the genre, depends on the platform, which we've talked a lot about, and it depends on what you're trying to do. I think there's still room in the industry for everything. There's less room for premium price stuff than there used to be, and I do think that model is going to start to vanish for most people in the next several years, but there's room for everything else from $40 on down in a wide variety of different monetization models.
I agree with that. I would put a little bit different spin on it. I would say there's no room for a premium game anymore that hasn't proven itself somehow, either through early access, where people have gotten a chance to touch aspects of it beforehand, either through being a sequel and it's building off of something else, or it has a pretty extensive free component where you can test it and prove that the thing has value before someone's going to open up their wallet and spend $40+. Now, there's always going to be a couple exceptions to this, but I think for the most part, that's probably going to be the case going forward.
Well said. And we did, you were right in your prediction. We did find some nuanced agreement here by the end of this discussion, less contentious than perhaps it might have.
Well, I want to come back to this at some point in the future and bring some quantitative data to the discussion. I just need some time to do the research or have one of my AI agents do it. And see if I like the results.
Feels like we have had some guests on previously and maybe some guests that we could bring on who would be new, who would add a lot of insight to this discussion. Because you and I are just kind of spitballing our opinions here, but some hard data might be interesting.
I think we need to bring on somebody in a publishing role who can share learnings across a large number of titles.
I think that would be excellent.
And it's going to have to be an ex-publisher, because I don't think anyone actively working for a publisher or platform is going to be allowed or want to risk their job to discuss this. Even though
nobody wants to risk their job for our podcast.
I mean,
I question their commitment to Player 2 podcast.
I mean, you could be huge.
You could
if you do this.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about the game of the week this week.
Well, I have been feeling bad for the last couple weeks because I feel like I keep talking about games which, knowing your taste in games, you probably won't like at all. So I tried to pick something this week that I thought you might like a little bit, even though you still won't have heard of it, because I tend to pick weird indie stuff that you haven't heard of. So I'm aiming for something that I think you'll like. And I'm curious if you've heard of the game Easy Red 2, which is an indie game on Steam.
I have not. I'm going to look this one up.
Okay, Easy Red 2 is a tactical World War II themed shooter, which was first released in 2020. It's built by an Italian indie developer. It is still being supported pretty heavily today. There is new content released recently alongside a pretty major 2.0 update that overhauled the visuals and animations. It is absolutely 100% not going to measure up visually or technically to the latest and greatest AAA shooters. But what it does do is capture kind of the fun of what I would probably say the early Battlefield games, if you enjoyed those.
I love those games.
It is planes, tanks, artillery, and infantry all mixing it up on a pretty giant battlefield with a lot of things going on. It does support single player, cooperative, and multiplayer. The multiplayer scene is fairly dead now. I'm not going to lie to you about that. But fighting with their bots is surprisingly diverse and engaging. One of the things that I really think is impressive about the game is just the scope and scale of the experience. The battles all feel pretty big and impressive. There's a ton of content for it. There are 4 paid DLCs that add battles and operations. They did a surprisingly good job at historical research and fidelity. If you include all 4 DLCs and the whole package can be had for around $30 right now, it's got over 75 missions that are strung together in these operations that have some minor branching in them. There is stuff you'd expect in there, D-Day and Stalingrad and the Ardennes and all the big battles of World War II, but it also includes a bunch of less well-known stuff. There are a series of battles on Shanghai and Nanking featuring engagements between Chinese and Japanese troops. Base game is $9. Whole package is $30. A heck of a steal if you like World War II shooters and want to kind of throwback experience that holds up pretty well today.
I do like World War II shooters. I tend to come back every once in a while and rewatch Band of Brothers.
As well you should. That is the best World War II drama that I have seen.
Unquestionably truth being said right here. I think when I get into that mode, I will check this out. By the way, I should give a plug and a shout out to our guest recently that we had, John Oswald. I was in New Orleans year before last, and he said, dude, you got to go to the National World War II Museum. I'm like, okay, I'm in New Orleans. What the hell am I going to do that? I did that. It was phenomenal. Like one of my favorite museums. My, at that time, 6-year-old daughter loved it.
Well, you have added something to my bucket list because I am a big enjoyer of World War II history. So I will absolutely check that out.
Yeah. But anyone who finds themselves in New Orleans, National World War II Museum, it's Smithsonian and like it's right below that for me.
Nice.
In terms of museums I've been to. Love it. And so, yeah, I'll check this out. It reminds me a little bit about early, not Call of Duty, early, I'm totally spacing on it. Anyway,
Medal of Honor. Medal of Honor?
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
I worked one.
Yes, it will remind you of
below
that.
Those guys.
It will absolutely remind you of that. So,
hey, check it out then.
5th episode, right? Everyone should like and subscribe if you enjoy what we do here so that we keep doing it. So.
Hey, if you work at a publisher or have worked at a publisher in the past or a platform and would like to talk in detail, hit us up in the comments. We'd love to have you on.
Yeah, come on and spill all your secrets, everything. We want to know it all.
Help other devs be better.
Exactly. That could be the motto for the Player 2 podcast, couldn't it?
Ooh, I love it. All right. Excellent. See you next week, everyone.
Later.